Okay, so once you get to the evaluation section, you probably think that you're almost done. But if we have a look at the marking guide, you'll see that you still got 10 more marks. So this is really important that you manage your time and ensure that you have plenty of words left and plenty of time to get these sections done. We're going to do them together because we're going to move around a little bit between these two areas. So let's firstly go and have a look at the evaluation section. Okay, so the way this is structured is we've got the evaluation. Okay, it's where you're evaluating the quality of the evidence to be able to address the research question. Then you're going to come up with improvements that relate to those limitations. What I suggest is that you do your conclusion next, and then after that you do this very important extra section, extrapolating back to the claim and then also your extensions. Okay, so we're going to work through it in that order then. Firstly, the evaluation. So you need to have a justified discussion of the quality of evidence. Okay, justified means provide reasons for the quality of evidence. Now think about it in terms of the quality of the evidence to be able to answer the research question. Okay, all right, so let's have a look at that section first of all. Okay, now, so I think that first of all, it's worth acknowledging the things that are of a good quality. For example, I was able to identify that all three of my studies agreed that that this treatment does improve this outcome. Okay, so say something that is, if you can, say something that's positive about your papers. And then you might want to say there are some limitations with the quality of the evidence to be able to address the research question. Okay, and again we use that structure firstly and then secondly. Okay, now so in this particular case the problem was it was about the research design. They were all retrospective studies. Now, and then I made a statement, but then I said why that's a problem. Retrospective studies introduce bias because there's a range of uncontrolled variables. And then I provided some examples to just sort of flesh it out and provide a bit more information. And I actually backed it up with a reference as well. The second one is that I said that they all use different techniques for their actual treatment. They actually use different chromosomal screening techniques. Okay. Now I said, so that was my statement about what the problem was. Then I said that why that's a problem, because they have different abilities to be able to detect the problem. Okay, and then I also added this other bit of research that I found along the way. And then I also said, thirdly, all of the studies are more than 10 years old. Okay, so I came up with three, limitations. So you're probably asking, what's the difference between limitations you talked about up here in your evidence section? Well, I want you to think more about what are the common issues. So not just an issue that was in one paper, but what are the common issues, and what are the common issues that prevent or that limit your ability to answer the research question. If you're struggling, age of the papers is quite a good one. Inconsistency with research methodologies is a good one. Another one that's quite good is sample size. Okay, so if it's a small sample size, then that reduces the statistical power, and it makes it more susceptible to random errors as well. So there's some. I think you shouldn't have too many problems identifying some common issues. And I think, look, another one that's really important is that you only looked at 3 papers. That's really not enough evidence. Or if you were doing a meta-analysis or something, you'd be looking at 20 or 30 different papers. All right, so that's your evaluation, and then coming up from that is your improvements. So let's have a look at what you're required to do here. suggest improvements to the investigation that are considered and relevant to the claim. Essentially what we're doing here is we're coming up with improvements that are relevant to your evaluation. Okay, the nice way to do this is put it into a table. I have split this over two, and I shouldn't. What I really should do here is go insert page break and have it like that. So what we've done is we've made a table, okay, and just in one or two words or a couple of words, just state what that limitation was. So retrospective studies, that links up here with this one here. So it just says that this improvement is related to this source of error. Okay, and now here's the important point here with the improvements. You're not telling Foreman and the others what extra evidence they should, or how they should fix up their studies. You're not doing that. You're saying what you need to do, what better evidence you need to get to be able to answer the research question. So given that we found 3 retrospective studies, my recommendation was to search the literature for recent randomized controlled trials. Okay, so randomized controlled trials are far better than retrospective studies. So my suggestion is to look for those studies, recent randomized controlled studies. Okay, the next one is different screening techniques were used. I've suggested that we identify and evaluate meta-analyses. So meta-analyses are when there's a whole heap of papers that have been reviewed, and because they combine the results, it reduces the bias of any single study. Okay, and the other one is outdated screening techniques employed. Again, use a meta-analysis or randomized controlled trials. Okay, so it's about finding and analysing these, and specifically looking at new technologies. Up here, because we're going to talk about the conclusion next, but there's 2 other parts here: justified scientific arguments. Now I'm going to find evidence of that all the way through your paper. Justified, using evidence, so the evidence is either data or research evidence, so references, and you're making arguments, so you're using data to explain something or to justify something, to argue something scientifically. Okay, and so the next thing we're looking at is a justified conclusion linked to the research question. Okay, so we are answering a research question, justifying it by using data to answer the research question. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to restate the research question. The research question informing this study was, and state the research question. Okay, then tell me something general. So in this case, all studies identified that there was an improvement. Okay, and then I went to a bit more detail by very briefly summarizing what each of the studies found. Okay, 1 sentence each. Foreman found this, focusing on the p-values. Kang found this, and Schoolcraft and Katz found this. Okay, so 1 sentence each. And then I've just talked a little bit here about the limitations as well, and this extrapolation of credible findings of the research to the claim. Okay, I want to show you this little gem here. This is from the subject report for psychology from 2023. And this probably provides the best example of what an extrapolation could look like. So it's saying that whilst they looked at this, so in other words, saying that human attraction, being biological, is the only aspect of the claim that was explored. There are many other aspects of biological human attraction that can be investigated as an extension to this investigation. And then they've suggested other factors. This would help to answer the claim more fully. Okay, and it goes on to talk about what the extensions would look like. Okay, so let's have a look. All right, So you might want to call it link to claim or extrapolation to claim and extensions. Okay, so start with extrapolating evidence to the claim. All the data supports that this testing improves IVF outcomes, okay? However, and then I've said that aneuploidy screening for women of AMA was the only aspect of the claim that was explored, and there are many other aspects of genetic screening that can be investigated as an extension, okay, including, and I've suggested some things. Now, if you've got more words left, you might want to go into some bit more detail, but that is your extrapolation to claim and your extensions.